Before we begin, let me ask you one question. What if the person standing beside you isn't really the person you love anymore? Imagine looking into a mirror and realizing that someone else is living inside your loved one's body. This isn't a story about black magic or haunted dolls. It's a terrifying tale of identity, soul swapping, betrayal, and one shocking twist that completely changes everything you thought you knew. Trust me, the ending of this movie will leave you speechless. So dim the lights, stay with me until the very end, and let's dive into the terrifying story of Sukma. At the beginning of the movie, we are shown a huge house. Right outside, we see an old woman dragging a girl inside. That girl was completely unconscious. On top of a car parked outside, a corpse lies exposed. It belongs to a woman. The old woman becomes furious and breaks down into tears. At that exact moment, the unconscious girl wakes up. The old woman grabs her and brutally smashes her head into the glass door. The scene cuts to a girl named Irini. She is weeping uncontrollably. Her husband Hendra arrives. He immediately demands to know where she hid her boyfriend. Without warning, a figure darts across the property. Hendra chases after the shadow. We quickly find out the truth. This was all just a hallucination. Hendra suffered from severe schizophrenia. Because of this, Irini lives in a state of constant sorrow. She worries that their son, Ian, is in grave danger around his father. The story jumps 2 years forward. Irini has now married a guy named Pram. She is moving into a new house with Pram and Ian because Pram was recently transferred to a new city for work. The house they are moving into is the exact same property from the beginning of the movie. However, its condition is now terrible. Irini inspects the whole house carefully. Inside, a large photo of the original owners hangs on the wall. As the two of them talk about the property, the caretaker, Sri, arrives. Sri is the same old woman from the opening scene. Sri begins taking Irini's luggage inside. She mentions she has been managing the house for the last 35 years. Since the owners do not live there, she handles everything alone. Moments later, the neighbor's kids come over to play. Among them is a boy named Lulik. He begins playing with Ian. The two boys quickly become good friends. Meanwhile, Irini feels genuinely happy. She leans in to kiss Pram. Pram steps back. He has a surprise for Irini. He takes her into a room where a sewing machine is waiting. Irini is thrilled. She used to work in fashion design, and now she can finally resume her passion. Later, Lulik and Ian play hide and seek. Ian runs off and hides in the room next to the kitchen. The floor suddenly gives way beneath him, and he falls into a hidden basement. The secret room is filled with old, dusty belongings. A massive mirror stands in the center. Out of nowhere, a loud knocking sound echoes from behind the glass. Ian freezes in fear. He approaches the glass. His own reflection starts moving completely on its own. Ian gets terrified and starts screaming for help. Nobody can hear him. The room is hidden deep beneath the floor. Back upstairs, Lulik tells Irini that he cannot find Ian anywhere. Irini assumes he is just hiding, but a thorough search reveals nothing. Irini begins to panic. Pram returns home from work right at that moment. Together, they search the entire house. Eventually, Pram discovers the hidden trapdoor. Down in the basement, he finds Ian lying unconscious. Irini breaks down in tears. In a little while, the boy regains consciousness. Irini asks Sri to stay there and take care of Ian. Sri seems deeply unhappy about the request. Later that night, while Ian is asleep, he suddenly stands up. He begins to sleepwalk. This is highly unusual for him. He has absolutely no history of sleepwalking. He walks out of the room. Down the hall, Sri stands in the shadows, beckoning him forward. Back in the bedroom, Pram wakes up. He notices his son is missing from the bed. He immediately goes out to search the dark house. He finds Ian sitting near the piano. Irini arrives seconds later. She was startled awake by a loud noise. Ian was violently banging his head on the piano keys. They quickly grab their son and carry him back to his room. The next morning, Pram gets ready for work. Irini stands in the kitchen making breakfast for Ian. Sri walks in and announces that the repair workers have arrived. While working, Irini looks at the mirror in front of her. For a split second, her reflection looks twisted and horrific. It returns to normal an instant later. The workers arrive and place that exact mirror inside Irini's bedroom. Irini doesn't want that mirror in the house. However, Sri insists. She claims the mirror is perfectly fine, and throwing it away would be a shame. Pram leaves for work. Irini gets back to her designs. Right then, the doorbell rings. It is Hendra. He has come to visit his son. He wants to take Ian to the local pool for a swim. Irini firmly refuses. Hendra stays stubborn and blocks her path. Eventually, Irini gives in. She demands that he drop Ian home early. Despite the separation, Hendra clearly makes an effort to stay in his son's life. He takes Ian and leaves. Hours pass. Hendra does not return with the boy. Irini begins to panic. She calls Pram, who rushes home immediately. A massive storm rolls in outside. It is pitch black. Finally, Hendra shows up with Ian. He calmly explains that they stopped on the way to escape the heavy rain. Irini loses her temper. She orders Hendra to leave. Pram steps in and barks at him to get out immediately. Defeated, Hendra walks away. That night, Irini has a vivid nightmare. She is standing on top of a desolate hill. The mirror is right there with her. Inside the glass, a completely different girl stares back at her. Irini approaches the glass. Seconds later, the reflection reaches out and grabs her. She gasps awake. She rushes to the bathroom and splashes cold water on her face. The overhead bulb shatters into pieces. In the darkness, she hears the sound of Ian running. Irini chases after her son. A piece of the broken bulb cuts her foot open. She tracks Ian back to the basement mirror. To her horror, Ian is trapped inside the glass, screaming. Irini grabs a heavy thing and hurls it at the mirror. Shockingly, the glass doesn't even chip. Ian remains trapped inside. Irini falls to her knees, weeping. At that moment, the massive mirror tips forward and crashes directly onto her. Irini wakes up, gasping for air. It was a nightmare within a nightmare. In a loop like that, a person cannot tell what is real anymore. She checks the bed. Ian is missing yet again. She searches the house and finds him with Sri. The old woman is helping Ian back to sleep. Sri claims the boy was simply sleepwalking. Irini takes her son back to his room. The next day, Irini is on a video call with her sister, Nina. Pram walks into the room. He tells Irini that they need to leave this house immediately. The mirror in the room is angled directly facing the doorway. Irini talks to Pram while watching his reflection in the glass. On the video call, Nina suddenly gasps. She asks Irini who she is talking to. According to Nina, the mirror is completely empty. Irini freezes. She spins around. The room behind her is completely vacant. Suddenly, the video call disconnects. Pram walks into the room a moment later and holds her, trying to calm her down. Later, Irini inspects the mirror closely. She notices a cryptic symbol etched into the top of the frame. Seconds later, her phone rings. It is Pram. He asks her if she picked up Ian from school yet. Irini is confused. She rushes out to find her son. She checks Shri's house first. Ian is there, happily playing with Lulak. Irini loses her temper at Sri. She warns her never to take her son without permission again. Sri calmly promises it won't happen again. Sri invites Irini inside for tea. During their conversation, Irini uncovers a dark history. The previous owners of the house were mysteriously killed. The property was passed down to their relatives, but they refused to live there. Sri has been managing the estate alone. Her husband used to help her, but he passed away a few years ago. The scene shifts to Irini visiting a local antique shop. She is trying to find answers about the symbol. Suddenly, she spots a book being purchased by a customer. The cover features the exact same symbol etched into her mirror. Irini follows the woman to a nearby cafe. She approaches her and demands answers. The woman listens to Irini's story. She reveals her name is Tayaz. Her own sister, Sari, went through the exact same nightmare. A flashback reveals that Sari was the girl trapped inside Irini's mirror. Tyas explains that the symbol belongs to the mirror. Unfortunately, she doesn't know the deeper meaning behind it. Later, Nina comes over to visit Irini. Irini takes her into the design room. Nina spots the massive mirror covered with a thick cloth. Curious, she steps forward and pulls the cloth away. Irini sits down at her desk to work. She glances at the glass and sees the ghost of Sari staring back at her. Without warning, the heavy sound of footsteps echoes right outside the door. Nina hears it too. A hand drops onto Irini's shoulder from behind. Terrified, Nina reacts on pure instinct and violently attacks the intruder. The lights turn on. It was just Hendra. He had come to the house to apologize. Ian returns home from school right after. Hendra tries to take his son with him, but Pram steps in. He firmly orders Hendra to leave the property. Hendra turns to leave. Right then, something inside him snaps. He spins around and brutally attacks Pram. He pins Pram down, screaming, "Who are you?" Irini rushes in and forces Hendra out of the house. Once he is gone, Irini confesses the truth to Pram. She admits that Hendra suffers from schizophrenia. She kept it a secret to bury her traumatic past. Later that evening, Irini is working alone. She hears a faint noise outside. She looks through the window and spots Sri acting incredibly suspicious. Paranoia hits her. She goes back to the mirror to inspect it. Out of nowhere, a raspy voice echoes from the glass. "Do not trust him." Right before her eyes, words begin to bleed onto the surface of the mirror. Irini tries to wipe them away, but the stains are permanent. The next day, Irini goes to pick up Ian from school. She runs into Hendra and tells him everything. She describes the bleeding words on the glass. Hendra listens closely. He instantly realizes the words are an anagram. It hides two specific names. The names are Sukma and Vera. At this point, Irini has no idea who they are. Irini immediately schedules another meeting with Tyas. She learns that Tyas' sister and mother lived in that exact house 2 years ago. Tyas explains that everything was peaceful until they dug that mirror out of the basement. After that, the haunting began. Tyas left the country for her studies. Shortly after she left, her mother and sister died under bizarre circumstances. Tyas pulls out a photograph of her late sister. Irini confirms that Sari's vengeful spirit is the one trapped inside her house. Tyas reveals one final detail. Sari had a mysterious fiancé who vanished without a trace right after the murders. Irini begs to see a picture of the man. Tyas promises to search through her old albums and find it. Irini borrows the cryptic book from Tyas. She drives straight to Shri's house while the caretaker is away and breaks in. She begins tearing the place apart. Inside a hidden drawer, she finds an old photograph of a couple. Next to it lies a torn page from a book. It details a blood ritual for a body transfer. The ritual states that during a full moon, the practitioner must open the mirror's gateway. They must feed their own blood to a young target. Finally, they must execute the victim with a sacred dagger. Doing so transfers their soul into the young body, granting them eternal youth. Irini pockets the torn page. She realizes it was ripped directly out of the antique book she borrowed from Tyas. Hoping to catch her off guard, Irini invites Sri over for dinner. She casually asks what Sari was like as a tenant. Sri claims she knows the intimate details of every person who lived there. Irini presses further. She notes that Sri previously claimed she wasn't working at the house when Sari lived there. Irini asks if you weren't here, who was? Irini suddenly bursts into a violent coughing fit. Sri slowly stands up from the table. She coldly states that the woman managing the house back then was a caretaker named Sukma. With that, she vanishes into the night. The next morning, Irini frantically explains the ritual to Pram. Pram dismisses her fears entirely. He tells her Sri is just a senile old woman talking nonsense. He urges her to ignore it and leaves for work. Shortly after Pram leaves, Sri appears at the front door. She tells Irini to come with her to her cabin. She promises to reveal the entire truth. Irini agrees and follows her. Once inside, Sri locks the heavy door and hangs the key on a wall peg. Irini notices the key immediately. Making a quick excuse to use the restroom, she snatches the key off the peg. Sri sits her down and confesses. She admits that Sari failed to meet her specific requirements, so she had to kill her. She murdered Sari's mother as well. Irini realizes the truth. Sri was trying to steal Sari's youth. However, the full moon had already passed before the ritual could be finished. The window closed. In a fit of pure rage, Sri slaughtered them both. Sri smiles wickedly. She admits she knows Irini stole the missing page from her book. However, she doesn't need it. She has memorized every word of the incantation. Irini is her next target. She is going to steal Irini's body. Irini bolts for the exit. Sri lunges forward and violently slams the door, crushing Irini's hand. Irini screams, fights through the pain, and escapes into the woods. She runs straight into Pram's car on the road. She jumps in and they speed back to the house. They burst through the front door. Irini frantically tells Pram that they need to grab Ian and leave the city immediately. She runs off to find her son. Sri appears right outside the house. Irini screams at Pram to keep the door locked. Pram completely ignores her. He unlocks the door and steps outside. Right in front of Irini's eyes, Pram pulls the old, decrepit Sri into his arms and passionately kisses her. Irini stands frozen in shock. Nothing makes sense. Pram had rejected Irini's affection earlier, yet here he was, kissing this old woman. Before she can process the horror, Pram strikes her, knocking her completely unconscious. The movie finally reveals its biggest twist. Sri is not an old caretaker. Sri is actually Sukma. Pram's true identity is Vera. Their names were hidden in the anagram all along. They are husband and wife. Sukma had desperately tried to steal Sari's body, but failed when the full moon passed. However, Vera succeeded. Vera successfully completed the ritual on a young man named Pram. He stole his body and took over his life. Sukma was left behind in an aging body, desperate for a second chance. Irini regains consciousness and finds herself bound tightly to a chair in the hidden basement. In front of the massive mirror, Pram and Sri are slow dancing. Inside the reflection, their true, horrific forms are visible. Vera looks at Irini and laughs. He explains that Hendra attacked him because Hendra had caught a glimpse of Vera's true form in the mirror. Irini realizes her tragic mistake. Because of Hendra's schizophrenia, she assumed he was just insane. Vera explains that this nightmare began years ago when he and Sukma discovered the mirror and the black magic book. They successfully stole the bodies of the original estate owners. As those bodies began to wither and age, they needed fresh, young vessels. Vera managed to steal Pram's body. Sukma failed to take Sari's. Vera leaves the room to hunt for Ian. He searches the dark hallways, unaware that Ian is hiding on top of a tall closet. Suddenly, Ian's phone begins to ring. Vera freezes and turns around. Just before he can look up, Sukma calls out his name from the basement. Vera abandons the search and walks away. Ian uses his phone to call his father. Hendra answers the call and rushes to the property. He breaks into the house and discovers the black magic book. The truth clicks in his mind. He tells Ian to stay hidden, grips a weapon, and steps directly through the mirror's gateway. He descends into a subterranean cavern beneath the mirror. The cave is haunted by the weeping spirits of every victim Vera and Sukma have ever slaughtered. Hendra navigates the darkness and spots Sukma. The blood ritual has already begun. Ian runs into the cavern. Vera lunges to grab the boy, but Hendra blocks him. A brutal fight breaks out between the two men. Sukma is just seconds away from plunging the dagger into Irini. Suddenly, Ian fires a stone from his slingshot, striking Sukma in the face. Taking advantage of the distraction, Hendra breaks Irini's bindings. He screams at her to take Ian and run for their lives. Irini grabs Ian's hand and bolts toward the exit. The spirits of the dead materialize in the darkness, howling in agony. Irini trips and crashes to the ground. Sukma raises the sacred dagger, looming over Ian. She drives the blade down, but Hendra throws his body over the boy. The dagger plunges deep into Hendra's thigh. Hendra pins Sukma down with the last of his strength. He looks at Irini and screams at her to escape. Irini grabs Ian, pushes through the mirror, and bursts back into the real world. Safe in her living room, Irini breaks down in tears. She finally realizes that Hendra was never a threat to his family. He was trying to protect them all along. Pram, who was actually Vera, had lured Irini into the house for Sukma's ritual. She begins to weep over the tragic memories of her past with Hendra. Suddenly, right before the full moon sets, a body crashes out of the mirror. It is Hendra. He survived. Irini wraps him in a desperate embrace. The story jumps a few weeks into the future. Irini and Hendra are living a peaceful life. Tayaz comes over to visit. She hands Irini an old photo album. It contains a picture of Sari's missing fiancé. Irini stares at the photo. The fiancé is Pram. Vera had targeted Pram from the very beginning. Irini realizes that Sari's ghost was trying to warn her from inside the mirror all along. Irini looks back at the photograph. Pram is holding his teacup in a very unusual way. She then looks toward the kitchen table. Hendra is holding his tea the exact same way. Irini's blood runs completely cold. Hendra's soul is dead. The man sitting in her living room is Vera. A chilling post-credit scene reveals exactly how the nightmare concluded in the cavern. Before escaping the mirror, Vera had knocked Hendra unconscious. He successfully performed the ritual and transferred his soul into Hendra's body. He then walked over to Sukma. Sukma was bleeding heavily and completely incapacitated from Hendra's counterattack. Sukma knew her current vessel was finished. She was far too weak to attempt another transfer. Weakly looking up at her husband, she took the sacred dagger and drove it into her own chest, ending her life. This means Vera's evil spirit is trapped inside Hendra's body forever, meaning Vera would now live as Irini's husband forever. And the biggest thing is that Irini had also already realized it. Neither of them can change reality. Irini can never bring the real Hendra back to life. Vera can never resurrect Sukma. Everything ended up right back where it started. They are forced to live together under a false identity just like before. They are locked in a silent psychological war. Vera knows he murdered her true love, and Irini knows she was responsible for Sukma's death. Irini and Hendra were indirectly responsible for Sukma's death. Now they must live together with this crushing, unspoken guilt. Or perhaps the tension will tear them apart. And with that, the movie Sukma comes to an end. So friends, this was the story of the movie Sukma, which is a great Indonesian horror movie. And personally, I think this movie was inspired by the horror film The Skeleton Key from 2005. The core concept feels very similar. Both movies feature a mysterious mirror, a soul transfer ritual, and a very similar twist. However, Sukma executes the idea in its own unique way. But yes, the execution has been done beautifully here. Apart from this, there is nothing here that needs explaining. Sukma and Vera were a couple. When they discovered this ritual, they transferred their souls into the wealthy couple who used to live in the very house where Irini is now living. All they wanted was to remain young forever. But when their bodies also started getting old, they needed new young bodies. So Vera and Sukma made a plan that they would trap more people here. What most likely happened is that Vera had already taken over Pram's body. But after that, he also intended to take over Sari's body. But it didn't work out that way. So Sukma's spirit remained trapped inside Shri's body and started growing old. So Vera, who was now inside Pram's body, he and Sukma knew that they would need a new body as soon as possible, which is why Pram, who was actually Vera, had lured Irini into the house. In the same way, Vera transferred his own soul inside Hendra's body, and he started living with Irini here. But he knew that Sukma would not be able to stay alive now because Shri's body had become far too old. So in the end, she took her own life, and now in the end, Irini and Vera were trapped together. So I hope that you have understood the story of the movie Sukma well. You must have liked the video too, so I'll see you in the next video.